Hey guys, welcome to the You Are Worthy Network. I'm your host, Steve Warmer. I'm so incredibly grateful for each one of you. If you're just joining our network in the last couple of weeks, I want to say thank you. There was something in that invitation, whether it was from me or whether it was from one of your friends, something about that name, You Are Worthy, resonated with you, I'm assuming. And I'll say briefly, now I get to preface that briefly with I am a pastor, so it is subjective what briefly is. But you may be saying, what is the You Are Worthy Network? Well, it's a rebuttal to my own stinking mindset. As I did heavy mindset work the last 18 months, this word unworthy kept coming up. Unworthy of love, unworthy of success, unworthy of respect. I bought the lie. And the problem was, I knew it wasn't true here, but it had that far few inches to travel to here. And when I started to have more consistent victories over it, it was kind of like buying a new car. I said, look at all these people struggling with limited thinking, imposter syndrome, lack of self worth, lack of self love. And I said, you know what? I got to do a little bit to help. And so I created the You Are Worthy Network. And what I do is I interview entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, coaches, human interest stories that'll move your heart. But you know what? We talk a lot about their successes, but we can't end there. We got to talk about what they overcame because that's what resonates with us, right? That's what keeps us going when we feel stuck or hopeless. That's my not so short answer to what the You Are Worthy Network is. And you're like, okay, move on, get to our guest. Okay, I'm doing it. I want to tell you about our special guest just a little bit today. Today's guest, Amberly Lago, is a USA Today best-selling author, internationally renowned speaker on grit, resilience, and human connection, and someone whose story will stop you in your tracks. Amberly survived a devastating motorcycle accident that led to 34, not 33, 34 surgeries and a recommendation to amputate her leg. She didn't just survive, she thrived and built a life and a business helping others to do the same. Her new book is Joy Through the Journey. Her TEDx talk has hundreds of thousands of views. And her podcast, The Amberly Lago Show, ranks in the top 100, top 1% globally. She's been featured in People, Forbes, USA Today, The Today Show, and more. Amberly, thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to the You Are Worthy Network.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. And thank you for that awesome introduction.
You're very welcome. Tell us what part of the world you live in. We got people watching from all over the world the next few weeks. And so I don't want to assume that you're in the States, even though I know the answer. They don't. Tell us where you're coming from today.
I am coming to you from a small town outside of Dallas. And I'm originally from Texas, but I moved to Los Angeles and I lived there for 31 years. And we moved back here in 2021. And as we pulled in, we're pulling to where we moved to, and there's a field of cows and horses. And I'm like, what have I done moving my family here? But it has been an amazing transition for my daughter. Even though she grew up, my youngest daughter, even though she grew up in California, she is such a country girl. She goes fishing almost every day. She drives a lifted truck with a cow hood, rock lights, star lights. So she is definitely, and she's going to school in Texas. We just got back from orientation a couple of days ago. She's going to Texas Tech.
All right, it's going to be a Red Raider.
Yes, a Red Raider. I had a different shirt on, but it says guns up. And let me tell you, I told my daughter, I said, I don't think we could wear this in California. I don't think they would get it. I'm not sure they understand Texas Tech language, but yeah, wreck 'em, guns up. And, we took several pictures like this. So and we're even going to go to a football game.
Awesome. That's very good. I love it. So, Amberly, I'm going to see if I have my dates right. You know, I'm at that age where it's a 50-50 shot. Let's go back in time a little bit. May 28th. Do I have that right?
Yeah, you
May,
do.
May,
I'm
May, May,
impressed.
May 28th, 2010.
That was a big day.
I bet you'll never forget that day. Tell
Yep.
us about it.
I will never, it's wild how 1 minute your life can be so good. And I remember thinking, like, I had struggled for a long time. I was a single mom for a long time. I retired from being a professional dancer and started my fitness business and built that from the ground up. I used to take daughter, my oldest daughter, with me to the gym. She grew up in the gym and she knew exactly, she went everywhere. She went to, when I was dancing, she went to auditions with me. She even booked a job. They called me and said, well, actually, we don't want you, we want your daughter. And so she had kind of seen me build everything from the ground up. And I had finally thought, wow, I life is good. I finally got my career going. I had employed several other trainers. I met the man of my dreams. He's still the man of my dreams. We've been together for 20 years. We had a baby together. And so I had two daughters, and I thought life is good. And I remember I just finished training clients, and it was a holiday weekend. I had gone on an 11-mile run that day and actually beat my workout partner for the first time. And he was not too happy about that. But I was just feeling on top of the world. And I got on my Harley, and I remember putting my helmet on, and my friend Tina that I worked with said, Be careful." And I was like, I'll be careful. And I'm cruising out of the parking lot. And I remember thinking, I'm going to take the long way home today because I just want to feel this sunshine on my face and the wind through my hair a little bit longer. And I remember cruising down the boulevard and seeing a guy that was waiting to pull out of a parking lot. And that's kind of what you do. You scan and you make sure that everybody sees you as a motorcyclist. And I look, and then I realize, oh my goodness, he is going. I don't know if he thought he could beat me out of the parking lot or what, but he punched it out of the parking lot. And it was too late. I only had time to try to jump off my motorcycle. I let go of the clutch, tried to jump off, and I got T-boned. And I was
Mm.
thrown in the air, and I was sliding across the asphalt and sliding across the asphalt on Ventura Boulevard, which is a very busy street in LA.
Mm.
And remember thinking, my first thought was, oh God, please don't let another car hit me, because I couldn't tell what I was sliding into. And I remember coming to a stop and looking down at my leg, and it was just crumbled into pieces. I mean, completely, I felt like my leggings were the only thing that was holding my leg together. And there was blood everywhere. And I didn't know it at the time, but it's because my femoral artery was actually severed. And I remember screaming and saying some cuss words and then thinking to myself, oh, my Methodist mama would not be proud of what I'm saying right now. But I could not contain what I was saying. I was in so much pain. And it's crazy what goes through your head, because one of my next thoughts was, this can't be good. I might have to train clients on crutches for a while. Like, I had no idea, just that I
Wow.
was literally dying in the street. Luckily, I feel like I had a guardian angel, because I had this guy. Other people were not running over to me. They were just standing staring at me. And one lady actually fainted when she saw all the blood and how disfigured my leg was. But I had this one guy, he ran over to me and he ripped off his belt and he basically saved my life. He made a tourniquet around my leg. I was miles from the hospital, and the paramedics didn't even wait to hear the call. They were actually at the Coffee Bean, which was right down the street. They heard the accident and started running towards me before they even got the call. And so I feel like everything was lined up perfectly for me to not bleed out in the street and to get the help that I needed. I got taken to the hospital where it was just chaotic. And I mean, my husband, he's a first responder. He was a lieutenant commander with Highway Patrol, and he was hysterical. And
Yeah.
I just thought, well, maybe I'm dying. And so I yelled across the ER, honey, get over here and be strong for me. Because and the whole room went silent. And I needed to know that he was going to be okay in order to take care of our two kids because I thought I might not be making it. I didn't know. And that's the last thing I remember before they put me in induced coma. My vital organs were shutting down because I'd lost so much blood and they could not control my pain. And later, I had told my husband, I was like, yeah, you were freaking out. And he said, you didn't see what I saw. He said, you were taped to a gurney. The doctor was literally reaching into your leg with like forceps and trying to grab your femoral artery and clamp it. And he would grab it and it would snap back into your leg. And I was like, oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't see that. And so, thank goodness they put me in induced coma. Um, and when I woke up, the first thing that I learned was I had a 1% chance of saving my leg. They said, I'm so sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. This is like a war wound. We need to amputate. You only have a 1% chance of saving it. And in that moment, all I heard was, there's a chance. I and I was focused on that. Even though it was a 1%, there's a chance. And I said, well, I need to
Hmm.
find a doctor who's willing to take that chance with me. And so that's when the story of really gritting it out and the power of prayer and God's grace came into play. And little by little, day after day, they were able to piece by piece put my leg back together after 34 surgeries.
Oh my goodness. I mean, the actual event itself, I mean, there's nothing I can say, right? You've lived it. What an ordeal. As horrific as the accident was, and now we're in the ER and you're giving us a description about that. Like, where's your mindset when they start talking about amputation? I mean, what are you feeling when you hear that? You're still clinging to that 1% at that time?
Yeah, that was really my glimmer of hope. And it comes from my whole life of not having well, most of us don't have an easy childhood, but I come from a childhood where there was sexual abuse. I was sexually abused by my stepfather, a horrible divorce between my parents. We didn't have a lot of money. If we wanted something, we had to work for it. So I'd never been given anything. I had to work for everything that I had as a dancer, as an athlete. I think it helped me develop the mindset, but also from that abuse, I didn't focus on that, the bad. I did what made me feel good. And so I learned from a young age, focus on the joy, focus on what's good and make that get better and better and better and so when that time came that something very bad happened, I was already trained, focus on the good, focus on what's possible. And not to say that, I didn't have moments in the hospital where I was spiraling down into a depression and I worried and I was scared. That's all true. There was a lot of, it was basically, I felt like I was being tortured. But I will tell you that, the doctors came in when I finally did get transferred, and they came in like coaches for a football team. They came in and they huddled up. And I remember they had the screen, they didn't want to show me the screen. And they were looking at the screen in the hospital room, and they were all like, you could tell they didn't think that it was good. And one of the doctors, Dr. Thorderson, said, well, do you want to see? Do you have a strong stomach? And I said, well, yeah, I want to see. I want to know what we're doing. I want to know the next plan of action that we're taking. And they're like, okay. And the room got really quiet. And he flips the screen over to show me the x ray of my leg. And I can just see, I mean, not only did I have compartment syndrome, where that's basically where your leg is imploding on itself, but it was completely shattered into pieces from the ankle all the way up to the knee. In fact, I had a tibio plateau fracture, which is very uncommon. And so they were just trying to figure out how they were going to put me back together. And I think in those moments, I was just focused on what we could do and what could I do, you know? And my favorite prayer is the serenity prayer. And I even have it written on my wall: grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I said that prayer over and over. I still say it every day. It helps for most anything that you're going through. But I did everything I could to do my part to make sure I was healing the way that I was supposed to. I immediately, and I had somebody say, well, weren't you angry at the guy that hit you? No, I really was not angry at him. I guess I was upset that he never came to see me in the hospital. That would have
Mm,
been nice, or a card.
hmm
Um, but I wasn't angry. I didn't have time to focus on anger. What I
hmm
focused on was, okay, what can I do next? And what can I do? Like, what is in my control? And so, a few simple things that I knew to do, and that's based, and it started, I think, from a young age of being a dancer and an athlete, was move my body however I could. Now, I was completely bedridden. I have people say, well, how could you move your body when you were completely bedridden? The doctors thought I was crazy, but I was like, you know what? I need a pull up bar installed over my hospital bed. And they were a little baffled. And I said, no, I need to be able to lift myself up and do pull ups, and to use the bedpan as well to make it easier on the nurses, but lift myself up and keep my upper body strong. I couldn't walk. I couldn't get up to use the bathroom on my own, but I could control the ability to lift myself up on my own and keep my upper body strength. I asked one of my friends, Danny from the gym, to bring me some dumbbells from the gym. I'm pretty sure he stole. I asked him to bring me some dumbbells. I think he stole them from the gym. I still have them over in the corner here of my office. But they weren't big, heavy dumbbells. They were light dumbbells, but I could still do shoulder press and bicep curls. The point was not that I wanted to have this ripped body. That would have been nice. But no, I wanted to move my body because movement moves your mood. And it made me feel like I was moving in the right direction. I focused on what I ate. I mean, I had them bring me my own refrigerator, and I had
hmm
clients that were bringing me organic food. And so I was eating like no sugar, because the higher your sugar levels are, the more you can get infection very easily. So as long as my blood sugar levels were below 125, I didn't have to have insulin shots, and my chances of infection were decreased. And so prayer and gratitude. When I started spiraling down into a depression, I focused on what I did have and what I could do, and I still do that every single day. I'm not the most positive person. I have to work at it. I have a gratitude group. We call ourselves the God Squad. We share our gratitude list with each other every single day through a text thread. And gratitude is alchemy. It really shifts your perspective, and it's the quickest and easiest way to feel better about your circumstances.
Come on, somebody. I got to share this with you. Well, let's go back a half a step before I share. That's remarkable. I love that you had the fortitude to get moving. You know, do what you can. This is something I can do. There's a lot right now I'd like to do that I can't do, but here's a couple of things that I can do, and you chose that. And then I noticed this about you, even on our correspondence in email, that you sign off with gratitude. And I'm really aligned with that because I do a lot of teaching on choosing gratitude and how it is actually a choice. And I'm just going to camp on this for just a second, and then we'll pick right back up. So, like, whatever kind of day you're having, and I say this sensitively and compassionately, you still can choose gratitude. And whatever day we're going through, probably it will never compare to that day that you had in the following weeks and months. But if you're having anxiety, mistrust, worry, even bitterness, unforgiveness, gratitude will force all that negativity out. Now, the opposite will happen too. It's a matter of which one you choose, right? But if you're having a crud day, I tell people all the time, just write down three things you're grateful for. I said, you've got three things. Were you grateful that you had hot water in the shower today?
Yeah.
Yes. You had something in the refrigerator? Yes. If you got three kids, you're grateful you got clean socks, and if you got a matching pair, you're even more grateful, right? But these things accumulate. Gratitude accumulates as you choose it, and I bet you on that same piece of paper where you have three things that started out as a struggle, by the way, if you gave it just 10 minutes, I bet you'd have 50 things easy. And it just keeps growing from there. So I love that you're all about that. I'm interested, Amberly, in you're working the body, doing what you can. How's the mindset? You strike me as a very determined lady, a very resilient lady. You know, but tell us, were there bouts of dealing with your own worthiness or lack of during this time?
Oh, yeah. Not in the hospital. In the hospital, I think I did not realize how hard it was going to be. So in the hospital, the surgery after surgery and the pain, and there was one time I woke up out of surgery and the pain was so bad that I was convulsing and they thought they were going to have to put me back in a coma because they couldn't control my pain. And I think that was a surgery that I wasn't expecting it to be as bad. That was my skin graft surgery where they took all the skin from the top of my leg and put it on the bottom of my leg. But things definitely got harder when I got home. So, oh, and I will tell you that one other thing that helped me in the hospital, helped me when I got home, and still helps me to this day is being of service. And so, a great hack, if you're sad, go help somebody. If you're anxious, go help somebody. If you're in fear, go help somebody. If you're happy, go help somebody because it is a gift to you. It's a gift to them, but it's a gift to you as well. And that really helped me in the hospital and still helps me just to serve. And I mean, I was serving by just um, giving exercise plans to clients and workout plans. And I actually had a chair in the corner of my hospital room, and the nurses would come and plop themselves down and just vent to me about how hard things were. And, or some even cried to me. And I was just a shoulder for them to cry on. I mean, you can be of service even if you're stuck in a hospital bed. I'm living proof of that. But,
Yeah.
um, I will say when I got home, I think that's when reality set in. And I remember, my husband had been off work for 3 months while I was in the hospital. He was at the hospital every single day. So he had to go back to work. I was at home. I was still bedbound, couldn't get up, couldn't stand up out of the bed. Believe me, I wanted to, but I still had to use a bedpan. And so he had hired someone to stay with me all day. And I was so stubborn. And I was like, I don't need anyone to stay with me. And he's like, yeah, but you can't even use crutches or a walker or anything yet. Like, how are you going to empty your own bedpan? You know what I mean? He was right. But that was like, I just don't want to have a caretaker. And I had a friend of mine that came over. I trained with her for years, and she came and sat beside me. And I was newly out of the hospital. And she goes, well, you can't train clients anymore. What are you going to do? And I just burst into tears. And I was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to be a trainer. Like, I was so determined. Like, of course, I'm going to do that. It still had not hit me how bad this really was. And the unworthiness started to kick in. I was the main breadwinner of the family, and I had slowly but surely lost how I'd set up my business. it was starting to fizzle out and the income was slowly but surely stopping to come in. So here I am. We had $2.9 million worth of medical expenses. I had lost my career. I was staring down at my leg that was completely deformed and scarred when my whole life as a professional dancer, an athlete, professional dancer, sponsored by Nike, then in the fitness industry where I was doing, articles for Shape and Fit Pregnancy and infomercials and videos for fitness, I'm deformed now. Like, I realized my worth was dependent upon how much money I made and what I
Mm.
looked like. And I had nothing. And it really took me to a dark space, especially when I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome as a result of the accident. I didn't want to believe that. I had a doctor tell me, "Oh, I thought I was going to get better. You sleep, you eat right, you heal, you get better, you move on. I thought I'm going to get back to what I was doing." I learned that resilience does not mean bouncing back. Resilience actually means to choose to move forward with courage so you can have a life of happiness and joy and get to do the things that you love with the people that you love. It's not bouncing back. It takes a lot of courage. And to be told I'd be wheelchair bound forever and never work again, I thought that is just not the vision for me. It took me down a dark path of trying to get rid of the pain, tried every kind of treatment, and when I tried all these treatments, spinal stimulator, ketamine infusion, Eastern, Western medicine, opioids, flown out of the country for radical treatment, nothing was working. And I discovered wine and quickly went from being an athlete to an alcoholic. Then the shame kicked in. Imagine being this athlete, and I knew that that wasn't a good thing. And I grew up around an addiction, and I thought I was so different. Guess what? Addiction does not discriminate. It doesn't
Mm.
care how old, young, how much money you have, how much you don't have, where you came from. Addiction doesn't discriminate. And that was my actual darkest time was then. And I got to a place where I just thought, you know what? My kids could find another mom, my husband could find another wife. And I think what really saved me and changed everything was I'd always had a close connection to God. But I think when you're doing something that's numbing you out, yeah, it was helping to numb the pain. It also numbed my connection to God. It numbed everything. But in that moment, it was kind of a last grasp of help. I got on my knees and I prayed. And I think that gave me the courage to ask for help. And by the grace of God, I got sober in 2016 and got my health back, my life back, my connection to my higher power again. And so I am so grateful for that. But a lot of people think the motorcycle accident was the hardest thing, and it wasn't. It was the darkest place that I'd ever been in when I was living out of a bottle. And I used to have a lot of shame about that, but I share it now so that if you are listening and you're struggling, and maybe it's not, alcohol, maybe it's an addiction to shopping or porn or gambling or speed dating or whatever it may be. Maybe it's Netflix. I'm a little addicted to that. But I share so that you know that healing's possible, hope is possible, and change is absolutely possible.
There's so much gold in there. Guys watching this, Amberly probably doesn't even know this, but on our Facebook banner of our group, in the bottom, a little bit smaller print, it says, "Your story's not over." And I try to tell you guys almost at the end of each interview, but I'm going to tell you now because it's more appropriate now and the spirit's working. Listen to what Amberly just went through, what she just described she went through 16 years ago. Matter of fact, 16 years ago, just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Could have easily lost her life in that accident. And then the horrific, I can't even describe it, right? I mean, the scene she goes through in the hospital, the days, the weeks in the hospital, and then I can't imagine the fight at home after your husband went back to work. And I'm sure the enemy's speaking all kinds of lies to you during that time at home, even though you did have a caregiver still. Um, but here's the amazing thing. Her story wasn't over yet. It was a chapter in her story, God's story, her life. It was a chapter, a grueling chapter, a long chapter, a chapter she'd rather not live again, I'm sure, even though she's grown from it. And as guys, wherever you're at on the journey, hold on, fight through, choose gratitude. Another chapter will eventually come. So, Amberly, how did that new recommitted faith, maybe for lack of a better description, calling on the Lord that day, what did he do with that moving forward? How did he set you up in your humility, in your desperation, in your desire to call on him? How did he set you up for a comeback? Specifically, what does he have you doing now? How are you serving?
Well, I think God doesn't waste pain. I always remember that. So when something is painful, whether it's physically, emotionally, financially, whatever it is, I always think, well, what can I learn from this? What's the lesson, God? What did I not learn from
Yep.
this other time that I'm so hard-headed I need to be like knocked over the head or literally have an SUV hit me for me to actually learn a lesson? um, but I just I remember thinking this couldn't have happened for no reason, and I thought, well, I want to write a book. If I can just share my story and I can help one person to not give up. If I can, give them hope, inspire them to just go one more day. I take it one day at a time. A lot of times my husband will say, well, in 2 weeks, where do you want to go to dinner or something like that? And he's retired now. And I'm like, honey, I have to focus on today. I got to get through this day of all the challenges I have today, and then I can focus on that. But I remember writing this idea to write my first book, and I told a lot of people closest to me, and they were like, you're crazy. Like, you are the athlete, you're the trainer. Like, you don't even own a computer. You need to stick to the fitness stuff. And so I was like, well, then I'm definitely going to write a book. And so I don't know why I call me crazy, but when somebody tells me I can't or it can't be done, I'm like, thanks for the motivation. And
Just a little rebellious in there, right?
just a little, just a little. And I hand wrote 90% of my first book and then had an editor, you know. Well, I went to an editor. Everybody was calling me crazy. You can't do it. It can't be done. You're not smart enough. Like, you don't even have a college education. And I found this editor, and he had actually published 76 books. And he said, well, of course you can. I think it's a great idea. And so share that because it's very important to seek counsel and not opinion because everybody's got an opinion. But go to people who have done the thing that you want to do and get counsel, get good, solid advice from them. And so I called him and I was like, okay, I'm just about done with the book or the manuscript. What kind of laptop do I need to buy? He told me. I took a course. At Apple, and I was raising my hand for everything. And the guy teaching the course at Apple stopped and said, hey, I just got to tell you something. I've never had anyone take one of my classes that is not embarrassed to raise their hand for very like minor questions. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything and I need to learn. And I'm not afraid to ask questions. I don't care if people think I'm not afraid to look stupid. I know I don't know all the answers, but I'm eager to learn and grow. And I will always have that growth mindset. And I think it's important to have that so you can, and I always think whatever I learn, I'm going to help others and share with others. And I think from a young age, I have always had a heart for service. I mean, I started working when I was 8 years old, babysitting. By the time I was 13, I already had a job teaching dance. By the time I was a senior in high school, I worked 4 jobs and saved up enough money to pack up my little car and move to Los Angeles on my own. I didn't have parents that were like, let me go with you and we'll help you pick out an apartment. It was like, no, I knew if I wanted it, I had to work for it. My grandfather always said, you got a shovel in your hand, you can lean on it and pray for a hole, or you can start digging. So I pray, but I know if I want something, I better start digging. I better start working for it.
You are determined for sure. You're probably not going to say all this, and I know our time is limited, but I think it's fascinating how you take something so potentially tragic 16 years ago and you wrote that book, you continued to train, um, you have your own annual event, correct?
Hmm.
We'll get to that in a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah. I've got the annual event, and lo and behold, I had a publisher want my first book, and it became a bestseller and it launched on the Today Show. So now, anytime I tell my husband I'm going to do something, he goes, oh, I know you will. But from that, I got asked to do a TED talk at TEDx Berkeley. That was my first talk. And from that, I thought, well, if I can make an impact in people's lives through a book, maybe I can make an impact through speaking. So I started speaking on stages, and it fills my heart not to be on stage, but connecting with others and seeing that light bulb moment, seeing the transformation that happens. And yes, I have my annual event, but it's mainly not to just inspire people, attendees, but it's also to give other women who have a story a platform to share their message of hope and, share their wisdom and share their experience and their strength.
Well, one, I love that model. I mean, I don't know the details of it, but basically you have a master class where eventually those same people in your master class end up giving their talk on your stage. I love that model. And I will say, and I feel fairly comfortable saying this because I've interviewed a few people that have been in your master class, that they think the world of you and they
Mm.
know that they're not just a number, they're not just a client that pays them. You make them feel valuable. You pour into them, you invest your heart into them, and that's the gratitude, I believe, in pouring back, that serving others like you talked about. When there's nothing else you can do, you can choose gratitude and you can serve somebody else, even it's a listening ear to a nurse in your hospital room. I love that. And I love how you're giving back. And I have read your first book, like I was telling you before we went on air, and I highly recommend it. Tell us about the new book.
Yes, well, Joy Through the Journey was on a sticky note for about 2 years. My friend John Gordon, who I love and admire and respect so much, he wrote the foreword for the book, but he's the one who gave me the title a couple of years ago. So, Amberly, I'm really good at titles, and I think your next book needs to be called Joy Through the Journey. And I was like, okay, John, I'll write that down, stuck it on my computer. But looking back I was looking back at posts that I had done. One sec. My pup. Let me let my pup out. Sorry. Oh, Nuggy. Okay, I'm
Now,
back.
for those of you that thought I was going to sing right there, I got off the hook. She got back quick.
I got I was like, oh, my guard dog started barking. She was so good until then. But yeah, I decided to write this book when he gave me the title. I kind of looked at that for a while, and I had Wiley Publishers reach out to me and they said, "Hey, we'd like to do a book with you. We'd like for you to write a book. Do you have any ideas?" And I just like pitched them this idea of joy through the journey. And they said, "Yes, let's do a book deal." And I got off the phone. I was like, "What have I done?" And, and I walked out of my office and I said, "Honey, I just got a book deal." And my husband goes, "Oh no, when are you going to have time for that?" And I was like, "That is not the answer. That's not what the response I was looking for." But I really, the first book was a memoir meant to inspire. And this book is actually more of a self-help book. No matter if your life is going like you're going through challenges, or if your life is really good, but it is just so eventful and you feel like you're on the hamster wheel of life, like there are things, and this is a book, I'm no guru, I'm no therapist. These are things that have actually happened to me that were some very tragic, some that were health challenges, some that were really hard struggles, but I was able to spark joy and be resilient through these principles that I teach in the book. And so um, it it was really, I was in a place where I was like, oh, I'm not sparking as much joy as I usually do. And so I had to pause. I was like, I can't write a book about joy if I'm not sparking joy in my life. And so it's really, I had to really practice what I preach. And I feel like a lot of times when you put it out there, like, oh man, I wish I had more patience, you will get every lesson thrown at you to practice and get better at patience. It was like, I feel like writing this book, I had so many different things thrown at me at this time writing this book, that it was like, okay, do you really believe in this message? Does this really work? And I'm like, I can say yes, it really does. If I can spark joy through some of these challenges, then I know that it's absolutely possible if you just do practice these principles that I teach in the book.
You know, the whole thing with patience, I'm like, there's eight other fruits of the spirit. I'll pray for those because God's going to give me the patience test whether I pray for it or not. But I do want to say, newsflash, people are looking to learn. This is my perspective. I think a lot of people share it. People are looking to learn from those that have been through it, have lived it, and authentically want to share it to help somebody else. We're not all looking for I mean, we respect the gurus to a point, but we're looking for authenticity. Oh, I thought I wouldn't use that word. We're looking for realness. And that's what you are. And I know that book did extremely well. It was a bestseller, like how quick?
Well, I cried because I got the call that it was a USA Today bestseller. And I was literally I had an Uber waiting for me outside, and I was online, and my internet was kind of going in and out. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And they were telling me I was a USA Today bestseller. My family had just given me the dog that just barked, that puppy, uh, the night before my book launch. And so she was chewing the internet cables under my desk. And so that's why I was losing internet. And so I didn't really have time to even process like that I was USA Today bestseller, because I jumped in the Uber, got to the airport, flew to this event that I was speaking at, and it really hit me when I got off the plane and I'm walking, and the driver had a sign, and he held up a sign that said, Amberly Lago, USA Today bestseller. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is real. There's a guy holding a sign. And so I took a picture of him holding that sign. I was real proud of that. But yeah, it was just a dream come true. It's like that it's possible, that somebody like me who didn't know how to write a book, didn't know what I was doing. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping others, especially, even we were talking about books before we started. And I said, I always buy authors' books. They will send, I've written so many forwards for books, and they will send me the book, but I will also buy it because I know what goes into writing a book. But a book can change someone's life. And so if you are thinking about writing a book, I encourage you to do so. If someone like me can do it, you can too.
I love that. I'll share this briefly. I had a coach that knew I wanted to write a book, and I got away from it. I had an outline for it, but I just kept tabling it. Probably a little fear, imposter syndrome, all that stuff. Imagine that. And we got on a coaching call one day, and he said, "All right, when are you going to write that book?" And I said, "I'm not paying you today to talk about that book. However, I'm wired a little bit like you, Amberly. When we got off the call, I started writing the book, and 3 weeks later, I had the book written. Now, had a lot to learn about editing and proofreading and publishing and all that, but yes, you can do that. You can write a book. You can do anything. Um, Amberly, I'm going to have in the show notes where people can contact you and learn more about the great work you're doing. I've got one last question for you before we sign off. To that person that may watch this eventually, that feels stuck, that feels not worthy of love, respect, and success, that is doing everything they can do to get out of bed today and make a cup of coffee, what words of encouragement would you leave them with today?
I would say, well, I can share because there have been days where it's hard. I mean, it's not like I got through this and everything's great. It's like I still live with constant chronic pain. And I just feel fortunate that most days I can walk and I can walk without
Mm,
crutches, where there are a lot of people who have been diagnosed with CRPS that they can't get out of bed. But I kind of roll out of my bed and drop to my knees and I pray. And I'm just grateful for another day that I have breath in my lungs, another day that I can walk. And I mean, look, when I start to walk most days, I limp and I can easily go down into, like, oh, see, you can't even walk right today. You may as well just get back in bed. Who do you
mm,
think you are? How are you going to be able to walk through the airport like that? And I say, I get to walk. I am alive.
come
I
on.
get this life. I have a roof over my head. And then I just, so focusing on gratitude and focusing on the good, but then I always say one day at a time. And I think the opposite for me, the opposite of addiction is connection. But I feel like for so long, I felt like I had to do everything alone. And and you don't have to be addicted to anything um, to reach out and ask for help. But I would say out of everything that you could take away from our conversation today is don't do it alone. Reach out for help. Doesn't have to be a therapist or a counselor or even a psychiatrist. Heck, you can reach out to somebody on Instagram. You can send them a DM. You might not even know them very well, but I guarantee you there is somebody going through something exactly the same or if almost exactly the same. I thought nobody would understand the pain that I was going through or how I used to drink or be in that dark place. And guess what? I found a community of people who understand exactly. And when you can find people who you can relate to, who see you, who understand you, and they can say, oh, yeah, me too, it is so,
Oh,
it's empowering.
don't do it alone. We weren't meant to do life solo. We're supposed to do life in community. And I know you may have had bad experiences or mistrust issues, but there are your people out there that will understand.
Mhm.
Such great advice. Amberly, I want to thank you for being my guest today, but even more than that, I want to thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing the highlights, but also the difficult times. I really madly respect your resilience and your grit and your gratitude perspective. And I love how you're pouring back into other people, not to get something back, but because it's who you are, it's your heart. And that came shining through today. So I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Guys, just one last reminder, your chapter's not over. Some of your best days, some of your best chapters are still in front of you. Like Amberly said, don't do it alone. Don't give up. and expect amazing things. Till next time, take care.